Hey everyone, this is Mark from ISS Hedge Fund, back with the Core 2.0 tournament for Netrunner Ireland. And we've got game 2 today of the upper bracket, or the knockout bracket I should say, because it hasn't gone into upper and lower just yet. So we have Oren playing as Chaos Theory on the runner side, and we have James, who is irishmadcat, as PE on the corp side. So this should be interesting, it should be quite different to the last game. And yeah, not too much preamble. Hopefully you've watched the last video, you know the general setup. We're doing a Core 2.0 tournament, no restricted list, and going to win a Worlds 2017 mat. So let's get into the good stuff. Once again, this is a post-commentary but pre-recorded game, so hopefully I can kind of sync things up, and I apologize for the audio issues in the last one. Hopefully that won't happen at this time. Opening hand for James is pretty ice heavy. Does have melange though, so this is tempting. On Oren's side you have the magnum opus straight away, so it's almost automatically a keep. You have test run just in case something gets hit, because you do have quite valuable targets there with Fem and battering ram, both expensive, both cards that you want to keep around obviously, with only so much you can do in the core set. And yeah, pretty standard opening from James as well. Going with the two ice that end the run and sticking a melange in behind. The neural katana would have been worth an install on R&D perhaps, because as Jinteki you're not always that bothered about people accessing cards, especially agendas, because your ability will protect itself. Gonna just melange, make lots of money. Jinteki used to be quite poor in the core set. Celebrity Gift, however, will change things somewhat. Melange is always a good card as well, so you know, going to get plenty of money nice and early. Oren going straight for a test run into a second Fem, and is going to take care of this melange this turn, you'd imagine. Running quite early, so if it was a piece of ice with a couple of subroutines on it, Oren could have been in a bit of trouble, but going to take out the melange threat nice and early, and can then just magnum opus as well. We'll then have access to two Fems, one on top of the stack and one in hand. So now it's about how aggressive people want to be. Oren will probably want to just set things up. James is going to invite him in with the prospect of a snare at the bottom, but with no breakers, Oren might be considerably less tempted. Just going with the setup. And all the ice coming out for James. Possibly an ice heavy build, which you don't always see out of PE. Usually it's kind of the trick and traps, willing to just install multiple cards and say, here, come get one. One of these is an agenda, one of them is a snare. But unfortunately it's allowing Oren to just do the setup play. Finds a Ronin, which is a little awkward because he hasn't been putting things out to the side, hasn't been doing the acid spam or shell game, so could go for an install advance to the side and see if Oren wants to check things. With the amount of breakers in hand, Oren may not. Then again you have the scoring server available as well, but you are then taking up a valuable slot. So instead we're just going to ice credit. So going with much more glacier build than you might have expected from PE. You can see Hive as well, so that's a statement of intent if nothing else. And we're content with doing a draw, taking loads of money, and then installing one card typically. The test run might be worth holding on to if you're not going to install all your breakers, just because you can get something out in a pinch. Multi-axe is gone, so that's a big call. You don't want to go overboard against PE, but sometimes it's nice to be able to apply that little bit of added pressure. Does have Maker's Eye in hand as well, so the multi-axis is arriving. It's just a matter of which one is he more willing to use. James going for a push on the Nisei Mark II. Always an important agenda to score. And there's quite the Tower of Ice going on as well. So Oren may be content to just leave this one go. Could try to put a fork in the road, get a fem down somewhere, maybe even go for Maker's Eye. Just looks like they're going to poke HQ instead. So another femmed Enigma. But nothing that James is overly attached to in hand. The Ronin, probably the worst to lose. But most importantly, James will get the Nisei counter. And that will be huge to stuff things like Maker's Eye, indexing, and windmill agendas. Nisei into Nisei is always powerful. Especially when, as we see here, there is that server full of ice. It's definitely going to be taxing to run through over and over and over again. Oren does lose the fem, but as my silent co-commentator points out, we do have a test run in hand, so in the bin isn't actually that bad a place for fem to be. Oren's going to continue to press on HQ with the femmed target, and now we have indexing into Maker's Eye. And this is where the Nisei token could be very, very valuable. James, however, sticks a pad campaign into his scoring server. And it's a fairly intimidating server, so it might be left off. Unfortunately, it's going to occupy the space, but it's protected at least. With Magnum Opus on the other side of the table, you don't always want to be leaving very, very open servers. Very easy to trash assets and economy. So we're just going to see James take lots of money. And it's getting to be in a more and more unusual build. So now we have Whirlpool. So that could be a little bit of fun. A little bit anti-synergistic if you have Nisei as well. So you're trying to make them run, but stop them from running. It's going to be an odd one. Curious to see how it plays out. Oren gets the battering ram on Dinosaurus, so it's going to be big and beefy. The biggest piece of ice out of P we've seen so far is Hive in terms of barriers, and that's more multi-sub than it is strong. Battering ram could have dealt with it anyway. You're just spending a lot of money to get through the various subroutines. But strength-wise, they're okay so far. So I think just cut out with the order that things come down, because Fem on the Dinosaurus is obviously the preferred target, just in case. Or at least getting a little bit of a heads up as to what to expect. Maybe looking at the battering ram going, this is the wrong choice for this matchup. If there are hives hiding around the place, even though they've 2 less subroutines now with the Nisei scored, it's still 6 to get through, which is... Oh no, it's 4, because it's 2 credits for 2 subroutines, so not as terrible. James going for an interesting play here as well, installing the Junebug in over the pad. And you'd have to imagine they'll advance it twice. So this is interesting, but Oren doesn't quite have the clicks or credits really to test run for their code gate breaker and run server 1 twice. So possibly a little premature on the Junebug install. On the flip side, is going to be able to whiff the indexing with the Enigma. Ooh, and Oren would not like to see this, and this is why you draw early. Gordian Blade comes out and would have been very, very useful for that particular run. Sometimes if I'm in this situation and I draw it, I will keep it in hand and just kind of keep it to myself and pretend nothing ever happened. And now, admitting that it's a fail trap, not going for the score out. And Oren has the infiltration, so can double check just in case, but decides to go for the short gamble route instead. So Oren is pretty much ready for anything, can get money very easily, and can run through everything. Plus has the cyber feeder for added economy. So this brain trust, maybe it'll get fired into server 1. No, I'm just going to ice up and play it safe. Now maybe wishing that the pad campaign was still on the table. And there you go. Infiltration, PE's worst nightmare. So the Junebug, not going to be doing much, but at least he can fire the brain trust in, and Oren won't be able to double check what it is. So as expected, brain trust goes in, money's up. Not too flush for cash. Whirlpool is not going to do much here, so I think you leave this off. And yeah, we're going to see the hive resed. So 4 credits, and Oren in a good spot. I unfortunately cannot remember what the rest of the ice is in the server. I don't think it was anything that... there's a Mitsubaka at the end, and there's a Neural Katana. So nothing that he can't deal with. Neural Katana has at least a 3 credit tax with Fem. But isn't going to be used, so he'll Mitsubaka instead. Uses the Nisei token, so this is pretty much a sign to go get it again. Which is pretty unfortunate. You might be expecting more indexings, and as we can see, 2 Maker's Eye in hand. So maybe that was one to leave off. As Oren will have 2 more clicks after this to just take 4 credits and be ready for anything. Although that Ichi might prove more problematic. Loses a cyber feeder, unfortunately. And while he can make infinite money with the Magnum Opus, it's nice to just have these recurring credits that you can tick away on. And James is just rushing things into that server. Was willing to overwrite the pad, has now fired in a snare. And this is where the mind games arises. And Jinteki is always a mind game, and now that Oren has drawn the indexing, he may have a different focus. And just like that, I am wrong. This is where the mind games of Netrunner comes in. So he's goaded him in nicely. It's going to cost 6 credits minus the 1 for Cyber Feeder. Going to get hit by a snare, and is going to have to clear a tag. So that is going to hurt all round. And a lot of juicy targets in Oren's hand as well. Indexing and Maker's Eye. Keeps a Maker's Eye, but the indexing to make it that little bit safer is gone. Decides to play it risky. Ice Carver is on the table. Not doing a whole pile so far, but would it be useful for something like Ichi? But Oren is pretty content with no Scorch around anymore. It's interesting that James didn't jam the Brain Trust in there. Although maybe he's just seeing the fact that Oren is running absolutely everything now at this stage. So it's just going to sit back instead, take some money, which always really plays into Shaper's hand. Even though stack is dwindling down to 13 cards plus 4 in hand, And with the setup, it's pretty much just a matter of hit points at this stage. Oren will be keen to keep as many cards as possible. And use it to soak up damage from hopefully the ability by stealing agendas, but also things like Snare, maybe even June Bugs, as we've seen scattered around the place. So it looks like Oren's going to be content to poke once, take some money, and just wait for things to go into the server. Tinkering could be quite useful. That could make something like Ichi much easier to deal with. Hive as well could be slightly easier. It's probably best on Ichi, even though it's only 3 strength with the Ice Carver down. It'll still be 2, 3, 4, 5 to break. We seem to have settled into a mid-range where people are just happy to draw, slowly build up. And we see Neural Katana hit the bin. The Whirlpool is still there, which is an unusual one. I think if you're going to get Oren to run in a trap, I think he's just going to commit to it. We've seen that in the past, the last couple of runs. I nearly would have liked to see the Neural Katana kept. And unfortunately, the more hives you put on the scoring server, the worse it gets as you get closer to victory. So the harder it'll be to score the last couple of points. So this is an interesting move. I'm not entirely sure the Whirlpool will move, I have to say. I think it's a little late on it. And Oren, quite unlucky with the HQ runs, hits an Ichi again. Even though we're at 2-2, James seems a little uncertain and is in a bit of a bind. If Oren overcommits to something, there will be a chance. But at the moment, he's playing it nice and safe, just poking every so often, checking to make sure, sees a couple of failed traps there. But doesn't have to go too nuts. Meanwhile, there's a fair bit of unres ice if James does go for a score, so that's going to cost him a pretty penny. And now we see Oren scouting out a little bit more. Possibly start getting the R&D lock going. But of course, pop-up window makes it so much less tempting. Double pop-up window on R&D to make it even less tempting? Perhaps. Nope, sticks it on HQ instead, which also makes sense. Oren has been going for HQ an awful lot. But it may suggest that you have an agenda in hand. Trashes the Whirlpool this time and puts the hive up top. So is that 3 hives in a row? It's going to be an expensive server, but hopefully James gets the 3-pointer scored next. Because otherwise those hives are going to be significantly less of a tax. runs HQ again, sees Ichi again. If that ever hits the board, it will make things a little spicier. But Oren has been running with the 4 clicks, just in case. Curious as to how many Ichi James has. Because that's all that he's seen, just dancing around that brain trust. Card goes into server 1, but it's not the brain trust. Hopefully past me hovers over it. Just to double check. There we go, thank you. Pad campaign. So again is going to be replacing long-term economy with an agenda, hopefully a scoreable agenda. But you'd wonder if the pad campaign is better served elsewhere. Now he's getting him to comfort, so that is something at least. A little bit of chatter around deck lists, perhaps. Now we'll get to see the Mega Hive server. So each one is going to cost around 4, but it's going to cost James 5. So 14 credits on your scoring server isn't bad. The problem is, as we've said, if Brain Trust goes in and gets scored, that becomes 2 credits each. 2, 4, 6, 8. Which is still taxing, but you would have preferred it. You would have preferred this setup here much, much earlier. And at this stage as well, Oren just seems to have infinite money. So he'll take this hit, but I think he can bounce back. Well, factually he can bounce back much faster than James can. So the question is, how many more things does James have to just keep sticking in there, keep testing Oren, keep trying to drain that money? If he clicks for 6 and then runs, or vice versa, then you can start taxing it. But as it is, he goes down to 4, bounces back up to 10. Now at the same time, it might be worth the install credit. He's just going to take 3 though. At least you keep the snare threat alive with the 4 credits in hand. Infiltration could make this significantly more difficult for James. And Celebrity Gift. He's going to go for it. Okay, so showing everything you'd imagine. No, he's deciding not to show off the agenda, which is a little suspicious in its own right. Only gaining 8 credits. Even if you do show off the Brain Trust there, you'll get 2 credits for it, plus the 1 from the pop-up when they inevitably try and come in. But yeah, things are looking tough. If he does have a lot of assets and upgrades and things that he can just stick into that scoring server, force Oren to come and get it, then it's not so bad. But as it currently stands, Oren can just sit back and wait. Or, as we're seeing here, go all in on a Maker's Eye. Which makes sense as well. Possibility of 1 agenda in hand, but the rest of them are in R&D. You just have to hope you don't hit anything that's going to cause too much damage to you. Gets rid of a Junebug, hits an Issei, unfortunately loses the infiltration. That is a lifeline for James. But you'd imagine if he installs, Oren will just go for it. Because it's the one card that he wouldn't have been shown. And you'd have to imagine, just judging by what we've seen from the deck so far, that the agendas have to be somewhere. Oof, just whiffed on a priority requisition. And now things are getting a little more grim. Does go for the install of Brain Trust, which will possibly open a window for Prirec, but if that's scored, that entire scoring server just turns to dust. Oren with Notoriety in hand as well, that could really work well, but he's going to go for the Maker's Eye now. If I'm being honest, I would like to see Maker's Eye maybe next turn, but maybe he's fearful that it is an agenda in server 1, and it could have hit either Maker's Eye or Notoriety. Plus, these are going to be fresh accesses based on how much James just drew. Hits Melange, that would have been useful. And it looks like 2 more whiffs, but we're reading something. Hocus Aggregate, yeah, that makes sense to trash. So James does get the opportunity to score out the Brain Trust, bringing him one step closer. The question is, can he get this Prirec scored from hand? Especially now that Hive is only going to be 2 credits per Hive. So 8 credits total to get through. Which doesn't seem like enough. Unfortunately, Oren did lose the Notoriety on that score. But is now somewhat content to just wait. We're into kind of tense times. Oren is still drawing. Possibly needs to just leave all the cards where they are. James is down to a couple of options here. He could try and install a pad, pass that off as something. Maybe stick an Ichi or 2 up top, just to make it a little more taxing than 3 Hives. And hope to open a window where he can get the Prirec down installed. But no, he's just going to go for it. So here is more Jinteki mind games, possibly hoping that Oren will believe it's a June bug and not check it out, or cerebral. Desperate times call for desperate measures sometimes, and you do feel Oren is preferred here. So, but on the flip side, you do have to check it, double the install events. When your opponent's on 4, you kind of have to say, what's the worst that could happen? 2 brain damage, that's fine. 4 damage from a June bug, that's okay, I can survive it. And he is going to go for it, and that will be that. So it was cool and composed from Oren all along. He got the rig set up very, very early. Got a great draw at the start. Magnum Opus is just such a powerful card, especially when economy is a bit tight elsewhere. I think that's why Shaper has been one of the preferred factions that we've seen in the knockout bracket, at least, because Magnum Opus is just such a strong card. There's a reason it's on the restricted list after all. But once again, hope you enjoyed. We'll be going into round 2 and hope to get some more of the bracket shown. Hope you enjoyed it, and thank you for watching.